If it wasn't for the Most High who was on my side, man, ain't no telling where I'd be.
Mr. Wilson would've known.
Can't nobody tell me nothing different. The Father's been good to me.
So good to me.
Yeah. Wave your hands if you feel me. I'm a witness. Yahweh's been good to me.
So good to me.
Every morning that I rise, I thank Yahweh that I'm living. Keep my enemies at bay and never leave without my fringes. 1611 with me cause I'm on a mission. Talking sheep, I pay the cost, me and my lines really live it. I don't need no glory, you don't have to know my story. Glad I made it out this world cause this world was never for me. I thought that I was. If it wasn't for the Most High who was on my side, man, ain't no telling where I'd be.
Mr. Wilson would've known.
Can't nobody tell me nothing different. The Father's been good to me.
So good to me.
Yeah. Wave your hands if you feel me. I'm a witness. Yahweh's been good to me.
So good to me.
Every morning that I rise, I thank Yahweh that I'm living. Keep my enemies at bay and never leave without my fringes. 1611 with me cause I'm on a mission. Talking sheep, I pay the cost, me and my lines really live it. I don't need no glory, you don't have to know my story. Glad I made it out this world cause this world was never for me. I thought that I was. If it wasn't for the Most High who was on my side, man, ain't no telling where I'd be.
Mr. Wilson would've known.
Can't nobody tell me nothing different. The Father's been good to me.
So good to me.
Yeah. Wave your hands if you feel me. I'm a witness. Yahweh's been good to me.
So good to me.
Every morning that I rise, I thank Yahweh that I'm living. Keep my enemies at bay and never leave without my fringes. 1611 with me cause I'm on a mission. Talking sheep, I pay the cost, me and my lines really live it. I don't need no glory, you don't have to know my story. Glad I made it out this world cause this world was never for me. I thought that I was. If it wasn't for the Most High who was on my side, man, ain't no telling where I'd be.
Mr. Wilson would've known.
Can't nobody tell me nothing different. The Father's been good to me.
So good to me.
Yeah. Wave your hands if you feel me. I'm a witness. Yahweh's been good to me.
So good to me.
Every morning that I rise, I thank Yahweh that I'm living. Keep my enemies at bay and never leave without my fringes. 1611 with me cause I'm on a mission. Talking sheep, I pay the cost, me and my lines really live it. I don't need no glory, you don't have to know my story. Glad I made it out this world cause this world was never for me. I thought that I was.
Shalom, shalom, Israel. Welcome to another edition of Stick to the Script. I'm your teacher this evening. My name is Shahad Amath. And the title of the class this evening is Living Laws, How the Commandments Heal Our Communities. So, a lot of the things... the thing that we hear a lot of the times is we no longer have to keep the laws. You no longer have to keep the laws, right? But no one ever really talks about if the laws would be beneficial for us now, right? I think that would help to make better sense of that conversation, right? Some information that's always left out. So we're going to go through the laws, and we're gonna see if they would be beneficial to us, the children of Israel, today, right now, right? We're going to see, what the foundation is, what these laws are for, right? So let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 10 and read verse 12 and 13 when you have it.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 10, and verse 12. And now, Israel, what doth the Lord thy God require of thee, but to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul, to keep the commandments of the Lord and his statutes which I command thee this day for thy good.
These are for our good, right? So as we go through and get some of these laws, the understanding that is that these laws, statutes, and commandments that our God has commanded us to keep is for our good, right? The Most High talks about how he loves Israel, how he put Israel first. We were supposed to rule. This world was given to us. It was for us, right? And the idea that he would give us laws, statutes, and commandments, he would give us things that we were required to do that weren't good for us, doesn't make any sense. So yeah, of course these laws were good for us. Now we're going to see if they would still be good for us today, right? If there's a reason why we shouldn't be keeping them today, right? Go to Deuteronomy chapter 28 and start at the top.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, and verse 1. And it shall come to pass, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth.
So if we were to keep the Most High's laws, statutes, and commandments consistently all the time, right, he would set us on high above all of the nations on the earth, right? And there's some scriptures you can read that show what those blessings actually look like, what it would look like if we obeyed and kept the law, statutes, and commandments. How we would be blessed, right? What our lives would look like. Read verse 15.
Verse 15. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee.
And so if and when we disobeyed, there would be a punishment for that, right? And that punishment would look like the curses that followed those verses, right? And all of these curses fit people that are walking this earth today, right? We can go through all of the curses that the Most High had put on the nation in Israel, and we can use that to kind of identify who the nation of Israel is today, right? It's typically your brown people that are at the bottom of the social hierarchy in every land. Those are typically your Israelites, right? They have certain characteristics, certain behaviors that are universal throughout Israel. These are your Israelites, right? That's because all of these curses have only happened to them, and they're a punishment for us not obeying our Father, right? When we obeyed, we had protection, we had unity, we had prosperity. But when we disobeyed, we got the curses, we got captivity, we got broken families, we got poverty, and we got oppression, right? And you can see that throughout all the scriptures, right? Why would that be any different today, right? Let's go to 1 John chapter 5 and verse 3. And it's pretty clear to see that regardless of the efforts that Israel puts forth today, right, we are just in a situation that we can't get out of, right? And the reason we can't get out of that situation is because it's not for us to get us out of that situation other than to obey and to do what the Most High has commanded us to do, to keep his commandments. That's the only way out. Go ahead when you have that.
The book of 1 John, chapter 5, and verse 3. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments.
So this is how you love God. So if you truly love God, then this is how you do it, right? It's 1 John 5 and 3. It says, if you love God, that we keep his commandments. So we have to keep his commandments. That's how we show God that we love him, right? Read.
For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous.
And they're not grievous. They're not hard to do, right? The more you keep them, the more consistently you keep them, the easier they become, right? They become second nature, right? But that's what we are commanded to do. We are commanded to keep his commandments if we love God, right? So anyone who says that they love God and they don't keep the commandments, then they don't really love God. Because it tells you right here in the Bible how to show that you love God, right? Keep the commandments. They're not grievous. It's not hard to keep them, right? But the key to keeping the commandments is you have to desire not what this world does, right? But what we're commanded to do, which is often in opposition of what the world would want us to do and tempts us to do, right? You can tell, right, from the conditions that, look at our communities, right? We have fatherless homes, violence, addiction, slothfulness, laziness, right? And nobody trusts one another, right? Not even family. These are symptoms. These are the repercussions from us breaking the commandments, right? And you see these in our communities overwhelmingly, right? This is not things that other nations, that other communities really have to deal much with, right? This is because we went against our God, right? And now we're in a situation where we're being oppressed again, right? And this is the same pattern that we continue to go through all throughout the scriptures, right? This time it's worse because we've forgotten who we are. All of the other oppressions, we still knew who we were, right? But we have been completely damaged, right, to the point where we have no recollection. We have been separated from our past, right? Let's go to Leviticus 19. And we're gonna look at some of the laws, right? We're gonna look at the law of community care, right? Love your neighbor. We're gonna look and see how to do that, right? Read 19 and 17 when you have it.
The book of Leviticus, chapter 19 and verse 17. Thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt anywise rebuke thy neighbor and not suffer sin upon him.
You should rebuke thy neighbor, brother. They're interchangeable there, right? And not suffer sin on him, right? So when you see that your brother is about to sin, you need to rebuke him. You need to check him and let him know you're going off, right? You're about to do something foolish. You're about to sin. You need to turn away from that, right? And you need to get back on the path, right, before you go too far, right? You're supposed to, that's how you show that you love your brother, right, is you ensure that they don't offend the Most High, right? You assure that they keep walking that straight and narrow path. Read.
Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbors as thyself. I am the Lord.
So we're not to hold grudges. We're not to try to get back, right? We're not to continue to bear hate for our brothers, for our sisters, right? We got to let that go. We got to forgive and we got to move on in righteousness, right? That doesn't mean that you forget. It doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, right? It can hurt when you're offended, and that's a thing, right? And so you have to deal with that hurt, but you have to make sure that you're able to separate that hurt from your ability to forgive and move on, right? That's important for all of us to do this, important for us to building camaraderie, to building trust, right? These are all things that are needed in our community, right? We'll go ahead and read. Actually, jump up to verse 9.
Verse 9, and when ye reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not wholly reap the corners of thy field, neither shalt thou gather the gleanings of thy harvest.
Read.
And thou shalt not glean thy vineyard, neither shalt thou gather every grape of thy vineyard. Thou shalt leave them for the poor and stranger. I am the Lord your God.
So we had a law where we were not to collect all of our crops, but we were to leave some for those who didn't have to get freely, right? And so, you know, those who were less fortunate were able to go around to the different lands, to the different properties, and take what they needed, right? And because there was this law that made it a priority for everyone to be responsible for those that have less than, there was never an issue of scarcity. There was never an issue of hoarding. There was never an issue of jealousy, stealing, right? You didn't have people who felt like they needed to get as much as they could. They needed to gather as much as they could when they had the opportunity, because who knows when they're going to have this opportunity. No, there was none of that, right? You would just go to your neighbor and take what you wanted, take what you needed to sustain yourself, right? And you would be good. And there's no shame, right? There's no ridicule. There's no judgment. It's a law. And that's how you love your neighbor. That's how you take care of your neighbor, right? Go to Deuteronomy 15 and 7.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 15 and verse 7. If there be among you any poor, Salakia, if there be among you a poor man of one of thy brethren within any of thy gates in thy land, which the Lord thy God hath given thee, thou shalt not harden thine heart, nor shut thine hand from thy poor brother.
So you're not supposed to, you're required by law to make sure that you take care of your brother, that your brother is taken care of, right? If he doesn't have the means to provide for himself, then you make sure that you're able to provide the needs for him, right? And you do so willingly. It's a law. Read.
But thou shalt open thy hand wide unto him.
Open thine hand wide up to him, right? So you don't do it reluctantly. You do it freely giving, right? And because it's a law, because it's the culture, everyone does it, right? So there's never a scarcity, right? Read.
But thou shalt open thine hand wide unto him, and shalt surely lend him sufficient for his need in that which he wanteth. Beware that there be not a thought in thy wicked heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release, is at hand, and thine eye be evil against thy poor brother, and thou givest him not, and he cry unto the Lord against thee, and it be sin unto thee.
It would be a sin unto you if you have the ability to give to your brother, to your neighbor, and you don't, and he cries to the Most High will hear that, and you will be judged for that, right? Read.
Thou shalt surely give to him, Salakias, thou shalt surely give him, and thine heart shall not be grieved when thou givest unto him. Because that for this thing the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all thy works, and in all that thou puttest thine hand unto.
Think about if we're executing this in our communities, and everyone is doing so willingly, and there's no judgment, right? There's no. It's just a people caring for one another, right? This is how you love your neighbor, right? You provide for them in their time of need. For whatever the reason is, you make sure that you provide for them. And when that's a culture, right, everyone's needs are taken care of. Everyone feels good. So this these laws make sense. They make sense in that it's how you take care of a community. A community functions well when everyone is taken care of, right? When everyone has equal access to all of their needs, right? When their needs are taken care of, that's when a community functions well. And that's how our communities are supposed to function. But we don't see that now. We don't see that because we don't keep these laws, right? Continue reading.
Beware that there not be a thought, Salakia. Beware that there be not a thought in thy wicked heart, saying, the 7th year of release, Salakia.
Read verse 10.
Thou shalt surely give him, and thine heart shall not be grieved when thou givest unto him, because that for this thing the Lord thy God shall bless thee in all thy works, and in all that thou puttest thine hand unto.
See, people forget that it's the Most High that blesses us, right? It's the Most High that has provided all the things that we have, right? Whether it's a little or whether it's a lot, right? And so there shouldn't be any kind of reservation to part with your thing to help out your neighbor, to help out your brother, right? Because at the end of the day, the Most High is gonna continue to bless you if you bless your brother and sister, if you love your brother and sister, right? So it shouldn't be a thing, right? It shouldn't be a thing that grieves you, right? But in order to keep these commandments, you have to be able to separate the old you from the new you, right? The repented you from the worldly you. And the worldly you has a mindset of hoarding, right? A mindset of scarcity, a mindset of I gotta get it however I can get it, and when I got it, I gotta hold on to it, right? You don't trust people, right? But that is not the new you mindset, right? So you gotta find a way to separate and get rid of the old and change your mindset to one of love, loving your neighbor, right? Read verse 11.
For the poor shall never cease out of the land. Therefore I command thee, saying, thou shalt open thy hand wide unto thy brother, to thy poor, and to the needy in thy land. So
always be giving, right? Let's get an example of that. Go to Ruth chapter 2 and start at verse 2. No. Thank you. Yeah, so we should always be willing to give and give freely and give willingly, right? Because it feels good when you're in need, and you don't have the anxiety, you don't have the overwhelming shame, you don't have the lack of confidence, right? You're able to receive willingly and freely from any of those who do have, right? Because everyone is willing to share, right? You're gonna have it's just a great community, right? Where everyone is being taken care of. That's how it should be, right? Go ahead and read that. Ruth chapter 2 and verse 2.
Ruth chapter 2 and verse 2. And Ruth, the Moabite, said unto Naomi, let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, go, my daughter. And she went and came and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And her hap was to light on a part of the field belonging to Boaz, and was the kindred of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem and said unto the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered him, the Lord bless thee. Then Boaz unto his servants that was set over the reapers, whose damsel is this?
Verse 4, the Lord be with you, and the Lord bless thee. What if we greeted one another like that today? Right? Conversation would always start out great. All right, go ahead.
And the servant that was set over the reapers answered and said, is this Moab Moabitish. It is the Moabitish damsel that came back with Naomi out of the country of Moab. And she said, I pray you, let me glean and gather after the reapers among the sheaves. So she came and hath continued even from the morning until now, that she tarried a little in the house.
So Boaz wanted to know who is this damsel that's gleaning from my property, not because it's a problem, but he's just curious, right? You would be curious as well, right? And so his servants are letting him know what the deal is. Drop to verse 15.
Verse 15. And when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded the young men, saying, let her glean even amongst the sheaves, and reproach her not.
He said, let her glean, let her get whatever she needs, and don't give her any problems, right? Read.
And let fall also some of the handfuls of purpose for her, and leave them, that she may glean them, and rebuke her not.
And also, don't feel a need to collect as much as you usually do. Go ahead and leave some for her, so that she has plenty, right? And don't give her any problems at all, right? So this is Boaz obeying the law of gleaning, right? And it's a built-in it's a built-in welfare system, right? A proper welfare system, not like we have today, right? There was no Israelite had to starve as long as there was fields and farms, right? And it protected the poor, right? The widows, the strangers, and gave them dignity. They worked by gleaning, not begging, right? How it would help our community today, right? Instead of this every man for himself mindset that I was talking about earlier, the law of neighborly love would encourage community, food pantries, right? Gleaning from businesses, businesses, instead of throwing their food out at the end of the night, right? They would let people glean it, right? We can't do that today because the food that we have is so damaged that it spoils, right? And then there are so many laws that are put in place to actually stop the idea of gleaning, because this society needs the poor for it to function the way that it functions, right? And so because at the end of the day, it's to keep us in wickedness, right? There are all kinds of things that need to be put in place to ensure that we always have a mindset of every man for himself, right? That we don't trust each other, that we don't depend on each other, because our communities have to be weak. Our communities have to be broken down, right? This is part of the curses. This is part of the destruction that we are trying to get out of, right? So this is how properly gleaning would work in our society today, right? But because we don't keep these laws, right, we don't see that. It would inspire, what would happen is people would leave a margin, right, or leave extra, right? So you would always have extra of everything, right? Even in your congregations, right? If we were really gleaning, following the law, like we would have been, like we did in our own communities, right? When we had our own land, what that would look like is there would always be an excess, right? Excess food, excess supplies, excess everything. We would always have more than enough, right? Because everyone would be leaving extra, right? Extra money, right? Extra for anyone who's struggling, anyone who needs, right? There's always an excess. There's always plenty, right? And that would go to further strengthen the community, right? And it would cut down on jealousy and hatred, because people would feel seen and people would feel supported, right? That's what it's supposed to look like. That's what it's supposed to be. That's what this law that's what the love your neighbor laws look like, right? Let's go to Leviticus 19 and 15.
The book of Leviticus, chapter 19 and verse 15. You shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. Thou shalt not respect the persons of the poor, nor honor the persons of the mighty, but in righteousness shalt thou judge thy neighbor.
Only in righteousness are we to judge, right? So we're not supposed to judge matters based on popularity, based on how much you like or dislike a person, right? The only way that we are supposed to judge matters is in righteousness, right? So in righteousness, you need to make sure that you get both sides of the story, right? You need to make sure that you get the truth, right? And then you judge according to these commandments. You judge according to these, according to what it says in this book, right? And that's the only way that you judge, right? That's not the type of judgment that we see in this world. We see people with influence, people with power, people with money get away with things that ordinary people are not able to get away with, right? This is a lawless land when it comes to keeping these commandments, right? Jump down to verse 35.
You shall do no unrighteousness in judgment. The meat yard in weight, in meat yard, in weight or in measure. Just balance, just weights, a just ephah, and just hin shall ye have. I am the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt.
So, but this is basically talking about being honest when weighing and measuring things, right? So you don't cheat in your business, right? You're honest and upfront. Whatever you say that you're giving, you're given. You don't take a little bit off the top. You don't try to add filler ingredients, right? You don't try to add ingredients that are cheaper than the natural products, right? To make the cost of production go down, right? And therefore your profit margin go up, right? No, you're honest. You do business honestly. That's what this is talking about. And if we had that, if we kept these laws, we would have much more successful businesses, right? We would have much more trust. We'd have a higher quality of goods or services. There would be much more trust, and there might be much more willingness to buy and keep the dollar within our communities, right? But because we don't have that, people go and spend outside of our communities, right? Let's go to Exodus 23 and read 1 and 2, and then 1, 2, and 3, and then we'll drop down. Exodus 23 and 1.
Thou shalt not rise a false report. Put not thy hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness.
So don't be an unrighteous witness, right? If you saw something, make sure that when you're retelling it, you're telling the truth based on how you saw it. And don't make things up. Don't lie, right? Don't bear false witness. Read.
Thou shalt not follow a multitude to do evil.
And don't be easily influenced, right? Especially to do evil. If you have to be the one lone standout saying, I'm not going to do this evil, you shouldn't either be that every time, right? Read.
Neither shalt thou speak in a cause to decline after many to rest judgment.
Read.
Neither shall thou countenance a poor man in his cause. If thou meet thine enemy's ox or his ass going astray, thou shalt surely bring it back to him again.
Drop down to 6.
Thou shalt not rest the judgment of the poor, of thy poor in his cause.
Read.
Keep thee from a false matter, and the innocent and righteous slay thou not, for I will not justify the wicked.
So make sure that you have nothing to do with a false matter. They have nothing to do with any deceit, with any lying. Make sure that you are on the opposite end, away from that. Right? You don't want to get involved in that. If you see a situation where someone's lying, you need to correct it, and or you need to correct it first of all, and then make sure that you stay away from that. Right? Read verse 8.
And thou shalt take no gift, for the gift blindeth the wise, and perverteth the words of the righteous.
And don't take any bribes, right? Don't be influenced by shiny things, by gifts, gifts that are physical, gifts that are even a kind word, if it's done deceitfully, can seem like a gift, right? But it's really someone trying to soften you up, right, to take advantage of you. So make sure that you're not taking any gifts of influence, right? You're not being persuaded to pervert judgment, right? Don't take any bribes, right? And if we moved like that in our communities, if we were able to, we should be able to judge ourselves within our communities, right? It shouldn't be a situation where we have to go to another nation and their organization to judge our communities, right? It should be a situation where we're able to judge our own communities, right? But that starts at home. Judgment would be righteous, and when judgment is righteous, right, you get a righteous righteous disciplinary action, right? And that action is meaningful because it's based on these laws, right? And it's meaningful because a lot of times what ends up happening is you'll be ostracized from the community, you'll be ostracized from protection, right? And you'll have to go fend for yourselves. And it's much more difficult to live when you have to fend for yourself and you're not in the protection of these laws, these laws of justice and honesty, these laws of loving your neighbor, your brother, right? When you don't have those laws to protect you, when you have those laws as a hedge, right, life gets more difficult, right? Because now you have to fend for yourself. So that's why you keep these laws. It's because these laws are good for you, they protect you. But because we don't have that in our communities, we don't have that kind of trust. We don't have that kind of protection, right? We could get pulled over at any time for any reason, and every time it feels like it could be our last moments, right? We don't have the comfort of a just and honest justice system, right? Because we don't keep these laws, right? Let's go to Exodus chapter 23 and 1.
The book of Exodus, chapter 23 and 1. Thou shalt not raise a false report. Put not thy hand with the wicked to be an unrighteous witness.
My bad. Let's go to 1 Kings chapter 3 and start at verse 16. Salakia. So we're going to see an example in the scriptures of righteous judgment, right? How to judge righteously. Go ahead.
1 Kings chapter 3 and verse 16. Then came there two women that were harlots unto the king and stood before him. And the one woman said, O my Lord, and this woman dwell in one house. Salakia. I and this woman dwell in one house, and I was delivered a child with her in the house. And it came to pass the third day after that I was delivered, that this woman was delivered also.
So these are the two women that lived together and were both pregnant and delivered within 3 days of one another, right? Read.
And we were together There was no stranger with us in the house, save we two in the house. And this woman's child died in the night because she overlaid it. And she arose at midnight and took my son from beside me while thine handmaid slept, and laid it in her bosom, and laid her dead child in my bosom. And when I arose in the morning to give my child suck, behold, it was dead. But when I had considered it in the morning, behold, it was not my son which I did bear. And the other woman said, Nay, but the living is my son, and the dead is thy son. And this said, No, but the dead is thy son, and the living is my son. Thus they spake before the king.
So one of the children died, and what's being accused here is the old switcheroo, right? What's the accusation here is that the mother of the dead child switched children with the mother of the alive son child, and gave her the dead child. Right? Read.
And said the king, the one saith, This is my son that liveth, and thy son is the dead. And the other saith, Nay, but thy son is the dead, and my son is the living.
So both women are claiming that their son is the one that's living, and that the other is the one that died. Right? Read.
And the king said, Bring me a sword. And they brought the sword before the king. And the king said, Divide the living child in two, and give half to one and half to the other. Then spake the woman whose living child was unto the king, for her bowels yearned upon her son. And she said, O Lord, give her the living child, and in no wise slay it.
So the king said, Bring me a sword, right? And so they bring him a sword, and he says, This is how we're going to handle this, right? Because both of you are claiming the alive child, and neither of you are claiming the dead child. We're just going to split the alive child in half. You get half, and you get the other half, right? And so now you both have part of the alive child. And the actual mother, because of that bond that she has with her child, she, in that moment, would have rathered the other woman take her son, take her child, than have him killed, right? Because obviously, split a child in two, they're going to die. And so she said, no, give it to the other woman, right? And let's see what happens. Read.
But the other said, Let it be neither mine nor thine, but divided. Then the king answered and said, Give her the living child, and in no wise slay it. She is the mother thereof.
So the other woman, right, the other mother said, no, go ahead. Go ahead and divide them in two, right? Because she had already lost, right? And obviously she didn't have the bond with that child that the mother did, right? And so she was fine having the mother with the alive son lose her son, right? Because then there would be evil or even, right? Then they both have loss, and she doesn't have to suffer alone, and that kind of twisted and perverted mindset, right? Read.
And all Israel heard of the judgment which the king had judged, and they feared the king, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do judgment.
So this is righteous judgment, right? And what Solomon the king did was he played on the women's emotions, right? He played on the knowledge and the understanding of a mother's love and what a mother is willing to do to protect her child, right? And in this moment, what you saw was a mother who was willing to give up her child, to give up raising her child, to give up mothering her child to this evil woman, just because she wanted to ensure that her child wasn't killed, right? And that's the wisdom that we are called to have, right? That's the understanding that we are called to have, where that's how you judge a matter in righteousness, right? Let's go to Isaiah chapter 1 and verse 23. Isaiah chapter 1, and verse 23.
Isaiah 1 and verse 23. The princes are rebellious and companions of thieves. Every one loveth gifts and followeth after rewards. They judge not the fatherless, neither doth the cause of the widow come unto thee.
Grab Amos 5 and 12. So this is talking about corruption, right? And this is the prophets rebuking corruptions, right? They're saying the princes, the leaders, they're rebellious against the law, right? And they are friends with thieves, right? People who are thieving the congregation, they're friends with, right? They're working with, right? They're profiting from this thievery, right? Because they're getting bribes, right? Because they're getting kickbacks for turning and looking the other way, right? And not judging in righteousness, but judging in wickedness, right? They're not judging in righteousness. They're not taking care of those that are less fortunate, right? The fatherless, right? Nor are they taking care of the widow, right? The wife whose husband, whose head, who's covered has been taken from her, right? They're not taking care of the needy in the congregation, but they're looking out for themselves, right? And they're looking out for the wicked, right? Go ahead with Amos.
The book of Amos, chapter 5, verse 11.
Verse 12.
Verse 12. For I know your manifold transgressions and your mighty sins. They afflict the just, they take a bribe, and they turn aside the poor in the gate from their right. So
it's being said here that your transgressions are known, right? The way that you take advantage of the poor and needy, right? The affliction that you put on them, the bribes that you take, the money and gifts that you take, to not judge in righteousness, right? This is the prince and the leaders being called out for taking bribes and for oppressing the poor, right? And so judges were supposed to be honest, fearless, right, and impartial, right? Those are key components to righteous judgment, right? Businesses had to be fair. There's no cheating, no cheating on scales, on prices or contracts, right? Everything was always done in the up and up. Everything was always done honestly, right? And you were required to protect widows, orphans, and the poor from being crushed by the powerful, right? You were required to protect them, right? And how this would help our communities today, right? In our courts, in our workplaces, and even within our congregations, right? Because righteous judgment is being executed, right? Because there's no favoritism based on money, popularity, or skin tone, right? Within our own people. Business owners would refuse to cheat, refuse to overcharge, and refuse to exploit people. The community discipline would be handled by the scriptures, right? It would be based on the laws and not gossip based, right? This would build trust. People know that among Israel, justice is real and it's not for sale, right? You can't buy your way into justice, right? And so this is going to build a strong community of trust and a strong community of keeping the laws, right? Let's go to Proverbs chapter 6. And in order for this community to work, right, everyone has to work. Everyone has to put in their brick, right? Everyone has a need to contribute, right? That's how a righteous community looks. 6 and 6.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 6 and verse 6. Go to the ant, thou sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise,
So look at the ant and how the ant works, right? Read.
which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her own meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest.
If you've ever watched ants, ants are workers, right? Ants, they don't need supervision. They don't need other ants ensuring that they get the tasks done that they need to get done. They, morning, noon, and night, right, all through the day, they're moving around, working, gathering materials, building, whatever it is that needs to be done. They're doing that, and they do that because that's how they protect themselves. That's how they provide and take care of one another, right? That is a true community where everyone working together, right? Read.
How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard?
So how long are you going to sleep? How long are you going to continue to be lazy? How long are you going to continue to be to be lying around and not working and not contributing, right? And not doing what it is that you need to do to protect yourself. Read.
When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep?
When do you get up and quit sleeping so much, right? You've got enough sleep. Now it's time to work, right? Read.
Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth, and thy want as an armed man.
So because of the little work that you do, right, you're going to stay in poverty. You're not going to have what it is that you need, right? Let's go to Proverbs 13 and verse 4. So this is talking about slothfulness, laziness, right? You can't be lazy. You can't be slothful. You've got to be a worker, right? You have to be a contributor. Read.
Proverbs 13 and 4. The soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat.
The soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing, right? The sluggard, the lazy, always wants something, but is not willing to put in the work to get it, right? Always wanting, never working, right? But those who are diligent are going to have plenty, right? Because a diligent spirit is often a content spirit, right? And so it's not going to be a situation where there's always going to be a want, right? Like the lazy. However, because of the diligence, you'll have that protection, you'll have that hedge, and you'll have that ability to provide for all your basic needs and your desires, right? And your wants as well, right? Because of that diligence. Let's go to 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 and start at verse 10.
2 Thessalonians chapter 3 and verse 10. For even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any would not work, neither should he eat.
So the commandment is that if you don't work, you don't eat, right? If you're not contributing, then you don't get to partake in the spoils, right? Read.
For we hear that there are some which walk among you disorderly, working not at all, but are busybodies.
Disorderly, right? That means that they're out of order, right? We are not to be out of order, right? They're busybodies. They're just running around, burning energy, but not actually doing anything meaningful or contributing in a positive way, right? They're just wasting energy, right? Read.
Now them that are such we command and exhort by our Lord Yahushua, that with quietness they work and eat their own bread.
So they are to be exhorted or told that you got to work, right? You got to put your head down and you got to work, and you will eat of whatever it is that you put forth, the effort that you put forth in your work, right? You will be rewarded by your work, right, and not by someone else's work. So we're not to be slothful and not to be lazy. We are commanded to put in work, right? Let's get an example of that in the scriptures. Go to Matthew chapter 25. Verse 14.
Matthew 25 and verse 14. For the kingdom of heaven is as a man traveling into a far country, who called his own servants and delivered unto them his goods. And unto him he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 2, and to another 1, to every man according to his several ability. And straightway took his journey.
So this is the parable of the talents, right? And we can kind of skip forward through this, but it's basically saying that a man gave some money to his servants to invest, right? Let's drop down to 20.
And so that he had received 5 talents, Salakia, and so he that had received 5 talents came and brought other 5 talents, saying, Lord, thou deliverest unto me 5 talents. Behold, I have gained beside them 5 talents more.
So the servant who was given 5 talents, right? He doubled the investment and was able to give a return of 10 talents, right? Read.
His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things. I will make thee a ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord.
So because you've been faithful in your works, in your efforts, right? I'm going to reward you with more dominion, with more power, right? You're going to have a greater ability to do what it is that you see fit, right? Drop to verse 24.
Then he which had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew thee that thou art a hard man, reaping where thou hast not sown, and gathering where thou hast not strawed. And I was afraid, and went and hid thy talent in the earth. Lo, there thou hast, Salakia, there thou hast that is thine.
So the servant who was given 1 talent, right, is telling his Lord that he knew how strict of a businessman that his Lord was, right, and to ensure that he didn't lose the 1 talent that he was given, he buried this talent, right? He did the lazy thing, he did the slothful thing, he did the easy thing, and buried the talent, thinking, worst case scenario, I'm going to just return what it was that was given to me, right? And let's see how his Lord felt about that. Read.
His Lord answered and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest that I reaped where I sowed not, and gathered where I have not strawed.
He said, thou weak and slothful servant, right? Read.
Thou oughtest therefore to have put my money to the exchangers.
He said, you should have at least taken it to the exchangers, right? Read.
And then at my coming, I should have received my own with usury.
I would have received what I gave you plus a little bit of interest, right? That's the least you could have done, right? Read.
Take therefore the talent from him, and give it unto him which hath 10 talents. For unto every one that hath shall be given, and he shall have abundance. But from him that hath not shall be taken away even that which he hath.
So if you don't use your talents, you're going to lose them, right? If you don't use your talents for good, you're not going to be able to benefit from your talents, right? The Most High is going to take your talents from you, and you're going to be worse off, right? Read.
And cast ye the unprofitable servants into outer darkness, and there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
And you're going to die, right? If you're a slothful and lazy servant, right? We're all called to be servants. If you're not putting in your work, if you're not contributing to the community, to the betterment of the community, you're going to be destroyed, right? Because you're going to be anti the Most High, right? Slothfulness is it was back then, it was a sin, right? It was something that went against the laws, not just a personality trait that it seems to be more today, right? The righteous were expected to work, to build, to plant, to shepherd, to tend, to manage, right? These are all key components into building a strong community, building and sustaining a strong community, right? The work was tied to serving the Most High, not just making money, right? Not just benefiting monetarily, right? But actually serving the Most High. It would, in many of our communities today, right? Blacks, Hispanics, natives, we have a high unemployment rate, right? We are so dependent on the businesses around us that we don't own or have a stake in, but we're highly dependent on them to sustain our everyday lives, right? We're often dependent on others, right? We're also quick to chase a scam instead of steady work, right? We want that quick, easy dollar, right? Slothfulness shows up as procrastination, inconsistency, and unreliability, right? And all of these things are sins, right? A biblical work ethic would strengthen family income and stability, right? It would give our youth discipline, pride in honest work, and paths out of the street life, right? It would build Israelite-owned businesses that serve the community, right? We would be able to build our own businesses and serve one another instead of having to go to these other nations, right? We would work, but we wouldn't become greedy. We would work to serve the Most High and serve our people, not destroy ourselves with this culture that you see right now, right? And this would be such a huge abuse to our communities today, right? So this is the laws of work and slothfulness, right? And if we followed those laws today, we would be in a much better place than we are right now, right? So let's go to Exodus 20 and 14.
The book of Exodus, chapter 20 and verse 14. Thou shalt not commit adultery.
Thou shalt not commit adultery, right? This is something that we definitely are not practicing or haven't been practicing a very long time within our communities, right? Adultery is a wife sleeping with another man who is not her husband, and a man sleeping with a woman who is married to another man, right? And these are two things that it is a law against to do. It was a law then in biblical times that we were to not do this, right? If you you can read all of the unlawful sexual relationships, right? The relationships that we weren't allowed to have, right? In Leviticus 18, right? It gives a detailed list of all of the people that we were not supposed to marry, right? Your fathers, other wives, right? Sisters and brothers, right? These were all unlawful sexual relationships, and you can get them all in Leviticus 18. Let's go to Deuteronomy 6 and 6.
Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 6. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up.
So all of these laws, right, all the laws that we've read so far, and all of the laws that are in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, this is how we are commanded to communicate those laws, right? We're supposed to keep a remembrance of all of these laws in our mind, right? We're supposed to teach them diligently to our children. at every opportunity, right? We're not supposed to cease with teaching these laws, statutes, and commandments, right? And that's how we continue with protecting our family, with protecting our community, and with strengthening our community, right? Let's go to Genesis chapter 39. Uh, 39 and verse 7.
The book of Genesis, chapter 39 and verse 7. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me."
So this is Joseph's master's wife that is trying to entice him to have sex with her, right? Right? Read.
But he refused and said unto his master's wife, "Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, Salakia, and he hath committed all that he hath had to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?"
He says, in this house, I have the most power in this house. I have the most autonomy in this house. Other than your husband, right? I am second in command, second in charge. And your husband has allowed me to do whatever I wanted and to get and to have whatever I wanted, right? He's given me everything that I could have asked for, right? So why would I commit this atrocity, commit this offense against him, and sleep with his wife, right? Why would I do this wicked thing, right? Read.
And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her, to lie by her, or to be with her.
Day by day, right? So she was relentless daily trying to get him to bed her, right? And he refused, keeping these laws, statutes, and commandments, right? Read.
And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men in the house there within. And she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out.
So there was no one else in the house, right? And this is to show his integrity, right? And to show his committedness to keeping these laws, right? No one else in the house but him and the wife, and she catches him and grabs his clothes and tries to force herself onto him, right? And he gets away from her and he runs and he doesn't stop running, right? And he gets away. So Joseph refused to lie to her, right? He said and knew that it would be a sin against the Most High, right? Even though he suffers for it, he keeps his integrity, and the Most High later exalts him, right? The Most High later lifts him up, right? Let's go to 2 Samuel 12 and verse 10.
2 Samuel chapter 12.
Actually, let's skip over that, right? That's a story of David taking Uriah the Hittite's wife and then murdering him, right? You should you can read that story in 2 Samuel 11 and 12, right? That's another example of not keeping the law and how David was punished, right? So back then, these laws, they protected marriages from adultery, right? You didn't have husbands, or you didn't have men who were trying to sleep with wives. You didn't have husbands who had to be concerned with men trying to sleep with their wives. It protected children, right, from confusion, because there wasn't any divorce. There wasn't any stepfathers or stepmothers, right? There wasn't any damage from a one person household, right? There was balance, right? You had the mother and you had the father, and they were being raised in righteousness, right? And it protected the nation from being filled with broken homes and generational bitterness, generational suffering, right? What we see today in our communities are fatherless homes, cycles of cheating, right? STDs, emotional trauma, right? We see situationships where people are together basically just for sex, right? We see children being pulled between households, children not getting not being raised properly, right? Having being taught one thing in one household and another thing in the other household, which leads to them growing up angry or insecure, right? And if we actually kept these laws today, right, it would promote faithful marriages. It would promote consistent parenting and much more stability within our communities, right? It would reduce the domestic violence. It would reduce jealousy and violence from jealousy, and it would lower the amount of people going to prison or even being killed, right? And it would teach our sons and daughters the value of a covenant relationship over lust, right? This would strengthen our community incredibly, right? This is a law that today would be beneficial to us today in our community, right? When the family is weak, the nation is weak. And the way that they have destroyed us is by weakening the family, right? Removing the father from the household, causing imbalance in the way that our children are being raised, right? When we get back to keeping these laws, statutes, and commandments and rebuilding a family based on these laws, right? That's when we'll begin to rebuild Israel. That's when we will get the opportunity to get back into the kingdom and get back into our rulership, right? Let's go to Matthew 22 and verse 36.
The book of Matthew, chapter 22 and verse 36. Master, which is the great commandment in the law? Yahweh Shai said unto him, Thou shalt love thy God, Shalakia, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment.
So the first and great commandment that Yahweh Shai says there is to love the Lord thy God, right, with everything that you have, right, all of your ability, right? Read.
And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. While the Pharisees were gathered together, Yahweh Shai asked them, saying,
That's all I needed. So these are the first and great commandment is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy soul, and all thy mind, right? Keep the commandments, right? With everything, with all that you've got, right? Consistently. That's how you love the Most High. And the second is thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, right? And so what we see is that the laws that I went over, right? The law of love your neighbor, community care, the laws of justice and honesty, the law of work and slothfulness, the law of protecting family and sexual purity, right? All of these laws, all of these commandments are how to love your neighbor as yourself, right? And it says, on these two commandments hang all the law and all the prophets, right? So these two commandments are a summary of all of the law, statutes, and commandments that we are to keep, right? Read John 14 and 15.
The book of John, chapter 14, and verse 15. If ye love me, keep my commandments.
If ye love me, keep my commandments. Go to Revelations 14 and 22. It couldn't be any plainer than that, right? If you love the Most High, if you love Christ, then keep the commandments, right? That's how you show. That's the only way that you can show that you love Yahweh and Yahweh Shai, is by keeping the commandments, right? And it says it there, plain as day in the Bible. You can't get away. You can't get around that, right? It doesn't say keep some of my commandments, keep a couple of my commandments, keep most of my commandments. It says keep all of the commandments, right? Keep the commandments, period. Go ahead and read that in Revelations 14 and 12.
Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Yahweh Shai.
So here are the saints, right? They that keep the commandments of the Most High and the faith of Yahweh Shai, right? Keeping the commandments is how you become a saint, right? It's how you are eligible for salvation. What we've shown is that these laws, statutes, and commandments that you see in the Bible and the Torah, these would be beneficial for us today, right? And the reason why we're in the situation that we're in, right, in this captivity, is because we stopped keeping these commandments, right? And the only way to get out of it, like we see in Deuteronomy 30, is to turn take from the world, turn away from sin, and get back to keeping these commandments, right? And that's how we will turn our communities, right? That's how we will turn our captivity into our heaven, right? That's when we will have the opportunity to get the kingdom, right? Is by going back and keeping these laws. And we can see very clearly that these laws would be beneficial today, right? They would totally improve our communities dramatically, right? Our communities are destroyed because of this world. So let's get back to keeping these laws, right? With that, I say shalom.
If it wasn't for the Most High who was on my side, man, ain't no telling where I'd be.
Mr. Wilson with enough.
Can't nobody tell me nothing different. The Father's been good to me.
So good to me.
Yeah. Wave your hands if you feel me. I'm a witness. Yahweh's been good to me.
So good to me.
Every morning that I rise, I thank Yahweh that I'm living. Keep my enemies at bay and never leave without my fringes. 1611 with me cause I'm on a mission. Talking sheep, I pay the cost me and my